Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel. So in today's video, it's actually going to be probably a little bit of a long one. It's kind of like two videos in one, or three videos in one really, because I am going to be doing a review of all of the books I read in January and February. And ideally I will do this at the end of each month, but already got off to a little bit of a behind start this year. So I've got 14 books to review for you. And then I also want to share all of the books, or at least options for the books that I want to read during this month of March, because I like having themes, I like having challenges for myself. I think it just makes reading a little bit more exciting, especially if you do have a booktube channel. So for March, I am going to be reading all books that were very popular on Book Talk last year in 2022. Just books that I was interested in, but I never got around to. But over the last 4 to 5 months or so, ever since I had this idea, I've been just picking up books, and I didn't realize that I now have over 20 books, and today is March 7th, and I'm only just starting book 3. So we're not going to be reading all of the books that I picked out in March, but I'll read what I can, and then I'll probably do a part 2 in the future. But I'll leave timestamps down below if you're only interested in the reviews, or if you are only interested in the books that I will be reading in March. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first book that I read this year was Leah Lewis's 8 Perfect Hours, and I think I just kind of picked up this book because I was in the mood for something easy and chill after the holiday craziness, which I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like Christmas and New Year's already feels so long ago. But I just wasn't expecting this to be that great, just because I'm not personally a huge fan of rom-coms, and now all those kind of books have that stereotypical cartoon animated look on the cover, and I often shy away from them. But this was so good. So this is about a girl who gets stuck in a traffic jam and she can't leave for 8 hours, 8 perfect hours. And at first I thought that was going to be basically the whole book, but that really is just a very short portion at the beginning, and that is when she meets a guy, and basically the whole book they are running into each other all these different places, and I just felt like it was really well written. There's a magical element to it, but it's not too much, and the characters were likable. A lot of times I feel like I don't like the female main characters in these books. They are kind of annoying sometimes, but I really liked this 30-something Noelle Butterby, and I'll kind of talk about it more in a little bit, but sometimes these hidden books are much better than other books that are really, really talked about. So I would highly recommend this. I gave it a 4.5, which is pretty high for me for this rom-com type of book. Next, I went somewhere very different, and I actually was filming a video of this, and I just didn't think it turned out very well. I am struggling when I'm doing these reading vlogs of actually vlogging enough. I feel like they always just turn into me talking a lot. So I'm gonna get better at that. I'm gonna work on that. But all that to say, I did scrap this video, which was reading the original Mistborn trilogy in a week. And I actually almost did it. It's a lot of pages, you guys. I feel like this doesn't do it justice, but it was a lot of pages to read in a week. I ended up getting through most of it. I think 2 books and 3/4. And then I went on a little long weekend family trip, and so I didn't pick it back up until I got back. So if you counted all of that, it probably took me about 2 weeks, but in reality, probably 9 days of really reading it. And so ideally, I would have read it a little bit slower. I will definitely go back and reread these at some point, but I didn't skim, I still did read everything carefully, but I think it was just too much of a story in a short period of time. But these books were truly amazing. My husband had been trying to get me to read them for quite a while, and I always knew I would, but I had this idea of trying to read them in a week. And they're not my favorite ever. These are literally his favorite books above Harry Potter. Nothing really goes above Harry Potter for me in terms of magical series. This is pretty dark, but not so dark that a teenage boy wouldn't read it. I feel like that is what a large population of the Brandon Sanderson audience is like young adult and teenage boys. But I do think that these are very great stories for basically everyone. Actually, the main character is a teenage girl and also an adult man, so it really hits everybody, I feel like. But if you do want to like hear me talk more about this with my husband, who will totally nerd out over it, just let me know, because I might do like a coffee chat series where I just talk in depth about certain books with like somebody else that really, really loves them. And there's just so much that happens in these books that I can't even describe it. They are truly epic fantasies, and from start to finish, really, really good. Pretty dark, but still dang good. So 5 stars from these. I will absolutely be picking up a lot more from Brandon Sanderson in the future. Then I got What Lies in the Woods for my book of the month book for January, I guess. And this was a pretty good one. I really do enjoy reading thrillers. Sometimes they kind of all blur together, and there will be like occasional ones that like really, really stand out. And I thought that this one was a solid one. I don't think I'll like remember it forever. In fact, I literally had to remind myself kind of what the general plot was. But basically there are 3 girls. They connected as children and now they're all adults. I feel like a lot of times the main characters in thrillers, especially psychological thrillers, are like women or a woman in the early 30s that are having a complete mental breakdown. But anyway, the main character, Naomi, was attacked as a child. And so kind of typical in this type of psychological thriller, there's a lot of flashbacks, and ultimately you do figure out who attacked her. And so I would say it was worth reading. I think I probably gave it 4 stars. Yeah, I said solid thriller. I unfortunately guessed a few twists. They were pretty similar to another book I had just read, which, yeah, that sometimes happens. You read another book and the plots are very similar and it's nobody's fault, but if you read that other one first, it just seems better in your head. That's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, this author, Kate Alice Marshall, I did like her writing style a lot, so I will be on the lookout for more from her. Book of the month does typically pick pretty good thrillers, I found. Next up was one I was really looking forward to reading. This is Bitter Greens by Kate Forsyth, and I've only read maybe 3 books from her total, but the last book I read from her actually last January, January 22, The Wild Girl, literally one of my favorite books of all time, and that one was centered more around the Brothers Grimm and the girl that they actually got a lot of their stories from. And it's like my perfect kind of book because it's historical fiction, but there's also that fantastical element to it, and I am very, very interested in fairy tales and kind of like the history behind fairy tales. And that's what a lot of Kate Forsyth's books are about, because she like literally has a PhD in fairy tales, which is absolutely epic, I think. So this one, I wouldn't say I liked it as well. I gave it a 4.5 stars, but it still was beautifully written, amazing story. I just didn't personally like it as well or better than The Wild Girl. So this one follows 3 different women. The first one is the real life woman, Charlotte Rose de la Force, who lived in the court of Versailles during the time of Louis XIV. And she is the one who originally wrote the story Rapunzel. So part of the book is following her, but then another part is following like the Rapunzel story that is being told to Charlotte. And then there's another character, that witch, in the Rapunzel story, you follow her as well. So this was really, really good. I would absolutely recommend this book and this author in general if you are like me and you really do like historical fiction as well as fantasy and fairy tales. So she's an author that I'm pretty much always on the lookout for whenever I go thrifting or go to half-price books, because I will definitely read everything that she's ever written at some point. Here's another thriller that I kind of forget about. So this is Before She Was Found by Heather, and I have no idea how to say her last name, Gudunkaue, G-U-D-E-N-K-A-U-E. This one I did enjoy, another just solid thriller, one that obviously didn't stay with me super strongly, but I did enjoy it as I was reading it. So it follows these 3 girls who are friends, and one girl ends up really beaten up, kind of like the other one. But throughout the story, you're trying to figure out what happened, who hurt this girl. And I did pretty much guess the ending. But overall, I do think it was a pretty good book, and I gave it another solid 4.5 stars. Okay, so then I went into reading a series of romantic books, and I'm gonna go through these really quickly because I did do a reading vlog I was trying to read 7 romances in 7 days leading up to Valentine's Day, and I just posted that video not too long ago, so definitely go check that out. But spoiler, we'll go through them quickly, and I did only get through 5. And yeah, the first one, Spanish Love Deception, kind of like I was saying earlier with the 8 Perfect Hours, I haven't really heard anyone talk about that book, and I've heard everyone talk about this book. And I really went through like an emotional roller coaster with this one, if you did see that video, because at first I was like, and then I kind of got into it. And then by the end I was like, I don't think this really was that good. So first of all, it is a pretty thick book for the genre, I feel like. I definitely believe that it could have been edited down, just in my opinion, and there was a lot of kind of like repetitive inner dialogue that I just didn't really think was necessary, and a lot of characters just like acting in a way that did not make sense, and it was basically like an enemies to lovers. The entire plot was essentially the proposal, like bringing the grumpy person from your workplace, your boss, to a family event, you know, they fall in love eventually. So that really was like the plot at the end of the day. But the boss guy in this book, they talk about like how they had such like hatred for each other, such animosity, but he is nothing but nice in this book, and she just kind of refers to the past of him being that way, which it's like, okay, I get it, but you didn't show that in this book at all, so you really didn't have that like enemies feel. And the other thing that I found strange about this was that most of the book, it felt very PG, it felt very Hallmark, there really wasn't any like crude language or anything like that. But then at the end, it gets very, very R very quickly, and I just didn't think it really made sense with the flow. But it was a cute story. I would definitely watch this if it was a movie. I just didn't think it was worth all of the hype. And ultimately, I did give it 4 stars just because I did enjoy it, but yeah, it definitely was not like perfect for me by any means. This one, on the other hand, I gave a solid 4.5 stars. This was Very Sincerely Yours by Carrie Winfrey, and this one I actually got in a mystery box from a local bookstore, the Book Loft. You can check out that video if you never saw that one. And I was surprised when I got this because I had asked for like historical fiction and thrillers, but then as I read this, I realized that it is by a local author here in Columbus, Ohio. So that's very cool, and it also is set in Columbus. So that kind of just made it a little bit more fun for me to read, but absolutely anyone in any area all over the world would enjoy it, I think. And this one felt a lot more Hallmark than the last one, just very cutesy. We have another 30-something-year-old girl, Teddy, who works in a vintage toy shop, because of course she does, and her guilty pleasure is watching a kids show, which has a host, Everett St. James, who is a young man around her age, and he takes letters from viewers. So most of them are kids, of course, but she decides she's gonna start writing emails to him, and then they have a nice little exchange. They eventually meet, and we go from there. But I did think that it was written very well. I thought it was paced well, very likable characters, so I would highly recommend this one. Then we've got Life and Death, Twilight Reimagined, and literally it's just Twilight gender swapped. 4 stars from me. I had a hard time rating it because I was trying to look at it from like an individual book perspective. And yeah, I would say the original Twilight's got about a 4 from me, which I did read like when I was in middle school and high school, so it's been a while. But I would say that overall I gave Twilight about a 4, so that's what I gave this one as well. I wouldn't waste my time reading it. It is literally Twilight, just gender swapped. Although I said in the video where I read this that I wish that Stephanie Meyer would have just done this gender swap from the beginning, because I don't know why, I just liked it better this way. I think it kind of just makes more sense to have like the strong vampire be like a little girl and then like the human be a boy. I don't know why, I just feel like that works better. So if it's been a while for you, or if you're just like a super big Twilight fan and you never got around to this one, I would recommend it. Don't pay too much money for it, and don't expect a new story, basically. Then I read Lessons in Chemistry, which I quickly realized is not really a romance. It's much more of just like literary fiction. I think it's labeled as humor, which I don't know. I didn't think it was that humorous. There were funny parts in it, but not to say it's like in the humor genre. Much more historical fiction, but it basically follows this woman who is kind of ahead of her time. She wants to be a chemist in the 50s, I think, 50s or 60s, in the 60s, the early 1960s. And of course, still at that time, it was much more common for women to be at home, or at the very least not to have these aspirations to be PhD earners and to be kind of like at the top of the company, which is what she wants. She wants to be this amazing chemist. And she does have a romantic partner during parts of the book, so there is romance in it. But all in all, I'd say it's more of just like a historical fiction, literary fiction type of book. And I did like the writing style. There were certain things about it that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way personally. But all in all, I do understand the hype behind this book and I would recommend it. And I ended up giving this 4 stars overall. Then last book I read in that challenge was All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, because you cannot have any kind of romance reading challenge and not read Colleen Hoover. And I didn't really know what this was about. I actually just got this off of Book Outlet. It was one of the only Colleen Hoovers on there, so I said, what the heck? And I feel like the cover makes it seem like this is going to be one of her pretty graphic ones, but of the books that I've read by her, this one I feel like was much more story, much less graphic romance than some of her other ones. And I talk about this a little bit emotionally in that 7 Romances in 7 Days video, but the main plot of this story is that the woman is struggling with fertility issues and how that is affecting her personal mood and her relationship. And that is something that I am going through, my own infertility struggles. So it hit really hard reading this, but it was very, very well done. I'm not sure if Colleen Hoover has struggled with infertility herself. I know she does have a couple children, or if she just is a very empathetic person, but she wrote this very, very well, and I would highly recommend it to everyone. 5 stars from me. Out of everything that I just talked about, I feel like this one will stay with me the longest. Okay, just a couple more books and then we'll get into what are some options for March at least. So next I read Alice Feeney's Rock, Paper, Scissors, and this one I got from Book Outlet. I was really excited to get it for just a few dollars because I've been wanting to read Alice Feeney for a long time. And I thought that this one was a very unique thriller. Like I said earlier, I mean, a lot of them kind of have similar plots. They all kind of blend together. The twists are good, but also like not that crazy when you read a lot of thrillers. And I felt like this story was just a bit different than anything I'd read before. So I'm just gonna quickly read the back just to kind of give you the idea, because it is kind of like a complicated story, I feel like, to explain. But it says, things have been wrong with Mr. and Mrs. Wright for a long time. Which, that's funny, I didn't even put that together. Every anniversary, the couple exchange traditional gifts, and Adam's wife writes him a letter she never lets him read until now. So you're kind of going through present day, and then in between the chapters, it's a letter from the wife. So it's kind of like flashing back through the letters. Self-confessed workaholic Adam Wright has face blindness, different. He can't even recognize his own wife, and Amelia is sick of feeling unseen. When Adam and Amelia win a weekend away to Scotland, it might be just what their marriage needs. This weekend may make or break their marriage, but they didn't randomly win this trip. One of them is lying, and someone doesn't want them to live happily ever after. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secrets, and an anniversary they will never forget. So of all the thrillers that I've talked about, I think this one was probably my favorite. And I did give that one 5 stars because I really did feel like it was pretty much a perfect book. And last but not least, we have The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This was the second book I read from her. I read In a Dark, Dark Wood, and I definitely did like this one better. I did ultimately give this one 4.5 stars, another one of my favorite thrillers from the last couple of months. So yeah, this one was inspired by The Turn of the Screw, and it follows a live-in nanny who gets this kind of like incredible job offer, and she can't figure out quite why all these other nannies have left the job before her, but she's finding out clues along the way, and she doesn't know if it's a ghost or what. And this is one where you're not quite sure about the ending until literally the last 2 pages, but then everything is answered. And I like books like that because it does give you all the answers, but it's not until the very last second. So I would say, even though I gave this a 4.5 stars, this one, as well as Rock, Paper, Scissors, these were my 2 favorite thrillers from the last couple of months. Okay, and now let's get into all of my options to read during March, during this month of reading 2022 Book Talk books. So I'll just kind of show you and talk a little bit about them, maybe, but you're probably super familiar with all these stories. So pretty much I'm just gonna show you. But first, I'm gonna start with the ones that I have already read since we are on March 7th. So first up, I do have the Inheritance Games, and I do have the other 2 in the pile here. And this was the one that I was like most excited to read because I just thought this was going to be like my new favorite series of all time. And I don't know if I just like had the wrong idea of what this book actually was about, but I thought it was going to be a little bit more fantastical, and I thought there were going to be like riddles and puzzles all throughout the book. And there were like some puzzles, but it was much more like relationship based, focusing on the main teenage character who unexpectedly out of the blue inherits this billionaire's fortune. So it wasn't as action-packed as I was hoping, and I'll talk more about the rating and everything when I do that at the end of March, beginning of April. But I was a little bit disappointed with this one, so I'm not sure if I am gonna read the other two right now. I did enjoy this enough to read the other two, especially since I already bought them, but unfortunately that one just wasn't a 5-star for me. This one, on the other hand, I was really excited to read this as well because I am a big fan of thrillers and everyone was talking about this. This is The Silent Patient, deserves all the hype it gets. Absolutely loved it, would highly recommend. I'll talk more about it later. Okay, and then I just started one this morning, so I'm literally only 21 pages in, and this is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is one I had been hearing about for a long time. I got this like really pretty special edition off of Amazon, and it was like the same price as the normal, so that's kind of fun. So hopefully I'll like this one a lot. So far, starting out, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be, but it seems like it's going to be pretty good, following this young woman who, I don't know how yet, but she lives forever, and in exchange for that, nobody ever remembers her. So that's why she kind of has this invisible life. But yeah, I'm like literally 2 chapters in, so I don't really know anything yet. And then all these other ones, we'll see what I get to. Like I said, I'm expecting to get through like half of these, and then I'll probably do like a reading book talk for a month part 2 in a couple months. This one I actually just got from Book of the Month. Everyone was talking about this at the end of the year, still talking about it, I feel like. And this is Babel, an Arcane History. And I've heard a lot of mixed reviews that it's just kind of like dense, hard to get through. So I'm definitely gonna have to be in the mood for it, but from what I understand, it is kind of like a historical fiction / fantasy. I think there's some fantastical elements in it. Don't really know too much because I do like to go into books pretty blind. So I feel like even though it might be a difficult read, I am imagining that this could be a 5-star read for me. Then we've got The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I know a lot of people really, really do like Holly Black. I've only read one book from her. It was from the Tithe trilogy. I'm not sure like what the actual trilogy is called, and I wasn't that impressed with it. I feel like I'm not that into like elven fairy fantasy, so I hope I like this one better. I know a lot of people really did like this, and it's always fun to find a good trilogy if you do really like the first book. Next up, we've got the Book of the Year from Book of the Month, and I think maybe like on Amazon too, it got like Book of the Year. This is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I probably will read this one after The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, just because I have been really itching to read this one. Then we've got The Atlas 6. I've had this one for a while. I actually was gonna read this during November, last November, doing like a little bit of a dark academia month, and I just didn't get around to it. So really excited to read this one as well. The literal like most iconic book talk book, The Love Hypothesis. I've never read anything from this author, Ali Hazelwood. I know she's got a few that people really, really love, so I'm hoping I like this. Like I said earlier in the video, like I'm not a big rom-com type of gal, but if it has a good story and if it's written well, I will happily read it and I'll happily enjoy it. So I'm hoping, because so many people love it, that I will love it too. But it is a little bit thicker than I thought, so we'll see how that goes. Another rom-com by Emily Henry, another very popular author that I haven't read anything by her. This is People We Meet on Vacation, and I will actually be gone for part of this month of March, and I'm gonna try to pick some of the more like chill reads to bring with me on my trip, and this will definitely be one I take with me. I feel like of all the romances, these two were the ones I felt like I'd seen the most on Book Talk, so that's why I decided to get both of those. And then of course, It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, the absolute queen of Book Talk. I did read It Ends With Us, and actually probably my least favorite of all the Colleen Hoover books I've read, but I've just read like 3. But I did still like it. I liked it enough to pick it up. And this was pretty cheap, even right when it was released. So I was willing to pay, I think, like the $8 I paid for this one. Next we have The House in the Cerulean Sea. I feel like I heard a lot about this like at the beginning of last year. And this is by TJ Klune. And I did read another one by him, and I can't remember the name. Under the Whispering Door. Under the Whispering Door. And I liked it, but I didn't like love it. And I'm hoping I like this one a little bit better. I think I will. Here we have In 5 Years, which I actually don't really know what this is about at all, but it seems like maybe just someone that's really obsessed with the future and planning, like what are you gonna have accomplished in the next 5 years. But this is a really tiny one and I've heard good things about it. I did see it a lot on Book Talk, of course. So this is probably another one I'll take with me on my trip. I guess I did get another one from Emily Henry. I didn't even realize it. Book Lovers. Very, very popular on Book Talk, of course. So I'm guessing I probably won't read all these rom-coms just because I do like to switch up the genre. This will be one of the more serious ones, I think, An American Marriage. I didn't see this like on Book Talk as much as, of course, some of these rom-coms because those are like the most popular on BookTube, I feel like. But I think this is just gonna be a really good literary fiction story. And from my understanding, it follows a couple from Africa as they are just trying to live the American dream. And we've got one, I can't believe I haven't read it yet. It's Kristen Hanna's The Nightingale. And I really do like Kristen Hanna's books. She's one, I'm sure eventually I'll read all of hers. She's got quite a lot. And some I like more than others, but I really like how pretty much all of her stories are historical fiction set throughout all different points in time. And this one is set during World War II. That's why I'm really surprised I haven't read it because I do like to read a lot of books that are set then. But I really love that color a lot and I've heard very, very, very fantastic things about this book. A lot of people say that this is her favorite. So maybe it'll be my favorite too from her. Then just a few more, now you guys get it. Like I cannot read all of these in March. So we've got the 2 other books in the Inheritance Game series. I know there is that 4th one. I don't think it's actually out yet. But like I said, I will read these. I am like excited to read them, but I thought it was gonna be like I finished the Inheritance Games and then I immediately wanted to read the next ones, and that's just not how I felt when I did finish that. So I'll probably read those at another point in the future, probably not this month. And then, of course, the books that are like all over Book Talk now and forever. Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorn and Roses, and I know she's got a few series. Haven't read any of them. I've had these for a while and I think I'm just gonna do a whole separate reading vlog with these, maybe read them all right in a row, we'll see. But yeah, I don't think I am going to actually end up getting to these this month, but these are like the most Book Talk books ever. But all right, you guys, I know this was a long video. I hope you enjoyed and thank you so much for watching if you did stick with me through the entire thing. And let me know what you think both about the books that I have read in January and February, as well as the books that I've picked out for March. Which ones are your favorite? Which ones should I prioritize? Definitely let me know down below. And if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching and I will see you next time. Bye.